Upon the creation of the Republic, Rome faced a new threat. The growing Latin cities had formed an alliance, known as the Latin League. The Latins declared war on Rome, seeking to obtain Rome's strategic place on the Tiber and its valuable grazing land. However, they were the first to encounter the Roman phalanx, a formation adopted from the Greeks, consisting of tightly ordered, armored spearmen. To the primitive Latin armies of the time, the imposing wall of spears was undefeatable. The Romans defeated the Latin League at the Battle of Lake Regillus, and the Latins formed a new alliance with Rome at the forefront. The Latins merged with the Romans easily due to their cultural similarity. The expanded Republic now faced a new enemy to the south, namely the Volsci, who were advancing northward into Roman territory. The Romans pushed the larger Volsci force back and retrieved the lost territory. Rome then faced another enemy to the east, the mountainous Sabines, who had broken relations with Rome and consistently allied with its enemies, namely the Aquians, another tribe of mountain men who constantly raided Roman cities and villages. During this turmoil, the powerful Etruscan city of Veii began to make moves against Rome, wanting its position on the Tiber for its own. A war erupted, and the legendary figure of Marcus Furius Camillus led the assault on the Etruscan border cities, until eventually Rome took Veii. To the north, however, unknown to the Romans in their small struggles in central Italy, a swarm of Gauls fled into the Etruscan north, and faced the Romans at the Battle of Alea, where Rome's 6 legions were crushed and forced to retreat. The Gauls then advanced on Rome and sacked the city. The Romans were forced to bribe the invading Northmen to leave the city. The Romans considered abandoning the looted city and establishing the city of Veii as the capital, but decided to rebuild Rome and maintain it as the capital. They built the Servian Wall to prevent any future occupation from taking place. Rome recovered quickly and used the destruction from the Gauls to their advantage in securing the Republic. The Gauls would continue to raid the countryside, but never again raided Rome. To the southeast were the people known as the Samnites, descendants of the Sabines who controlled the Alpine mountains and had allied with Rome against Gaul. The Samnites had recently invaded the coastal lands of Campania. The locals reached out to Rome for help in pushing the Samnites out of their territory. Rome came and defeated the Samnites, and installed a garrison in Campania territory in Capua. However, unexpectedly, the Roman army stationed there mutinied, which inspired the Latin League to also revolt. The Romans signed a peace treaty with Samnium and put down the uprising with the help of the Samnites. After reconquering all of the Latin cities, Rome abolished the Latin League and decided to govern each city separately, giving some cities full citizenship, some partial citizenship, and others were simply Roman allies or even colonies. This meant the cities were no longer on even levels with each other, and they would need to go to Rome to solve any potential grievance, which kept Rome dominant in the years to come. Peace between Rome and the Samnites would last for years, until border disputes emerged as Roman colonists pushed further south. The friction developed until finally, full-scale war broke out in 326 BC. Rome was largely successful in the early stages of the war, securing the southern city of Neapolis and winning several battles in Samnium. But Rome's dominance in the war quickly shifted in the Battle of Caudine Forks in southern Samnium. Rome's phalanx, however successful it was in Latium, couldn't navigate properly in the mountainous Samnian territory, and they were easily outmaneuvered and crushed in the battle. The humiliated Romans were forced to surrender and had their armor and weapons taken, as well as 600 hostages, and they marched shamefully back to Rome. Rome was forced to sign a peace treaty, giving all of its land gains to Samnium. However, this 5-year peace treaty turned out to be a blessing for the Romans. The Romans recovered their strength and forged new weapons, and most importantly, adopted a new system of fighting. The phalanx, adopted from the Greeks, proved too inflexible against the Samnites, so the Romans created the maniple system. In the new system, the spear wall was forgone, and the men adopted the sword and shield for easier flexibility in hand-to-hand combat, as well as javelins to give the Romans a much-needed range weapon. The army was arranged in a crisscross pattern for better maneuverability. The new system also incorporated reserve troops, known as the triarii, who were the most experienced and skilled fighters, still equipped with spears, likely veterans from the earlier wars of Rome. During the peace, the Romans also forged alliances with the states surrounding Samnium, Apulia, and Lucania. Rome bolstered its borders and prepared for the coming war. However, after the war resumed, Rome faced several defeats at the hand of the Samnites, who had allied with some of the Etruscan cities to the north, and as war progressed, Rome looked more and more like the losing side. But just as the fate of Rome seemed sealed, Rome drove off the Etruscan force and retrieved the lands lost in Campania. The Romans pushed into Samnite territory, and the Samnites came to terms with the Romans. Rome constructed roads down through Capua, securing the land for Rome and strengthening the Roman territory. Rome was now the most powerful force in Italy. The surrounding people groups around Rome had become fearful of Rome's new strength, and they began to ally against the growing threat. Rome fought wars against the Etruscans and the Umbrians in the north, as well as the remnants of the Gauls, still in Italy, and then they resumed war against the Samnites in 298 BC. Rome had defeated each of these groups individually, but they now faced an alliance on the scale unseen before by the Romans. The Romans did not fear this new alliance, however, and they launched raids against the Etruscan cities to the north, simultaneously sending armies to the east to face the Samnites. The army to the east defeated the Samnites, however, they allowed the enemy to flee. The Samnites headed north to meet up with their new allies. This left the Samnite homeland open for Roman pillaging. The Romans knew that they could not defeat the entire army, so they launched several armies against the Etruscan and Umbrian cities, forcing the army to split up to defend their homeland. The war culminated in the Battle of Centium, where the Roman force annihilated the allied army in the biggest battle to have taken place in Italy to that date. Rome now controlled most of Italy, with the exception of the Greek city-states in the south. Rome began to push south with the intention of conquering the entire Italian peninsula, slowly taking city by city. Due to the Greeks' disunification, the Romans could easily exploit each city to Rome's advantage. One of such instances saw Rome send a fleet of ships to the Gulf of Tarentum to aid the city of Thurii. The powerful city of Tarentum had signed a peace treaty with Rome, stating that Rome could not send ships into the Gulf. The Roman ships were sunk, and Rome responded by ravaging the Tarentum countryside. Tarentum resorted to seeking aid from a Greek general, known as Pyrus, one of the men who had seized power after the death of Alexander the Great, who ruled over the most powerful kingdom in Greece, and had aspirations of creating a vast empire for himself. Pyrus gladly accepted the request of Tarentum, and amassed an army before landing in Italy. The Romans faced Pyrus in the Battle of Heraclea, where Pyrus claimed his first victory when he deployed Indian war elephants on the Romans, turning the tides of battle. Pyrus then reincorporated the Greek city-states that Rome had recently acquired, and pushed north, sacking Campania and Latium. He reached Rome and attempted to negotiate with the city. The Romans refused to negotiate, and Pyrus was forced to leave the city because Rome's army was still somewhere in Italy. Pyrus traveled throughout Italy, attempting to encourage the tribes underneath the Romans to mutiny against Roman rule, but was surprised by the loyalty of the Italians to Rome. However, not all of the Italians were loyal. Rome's long-term rival, the Samnites, had allied with Pyrus. Rome attempted to block Pyrus from reaching Samnium in the Battle of Asculum, but they were defeated again by Pyrus's war elephants, despite deploying anti-elephant chariots. However, Pyrus had realized that although he was winning the battles, he was not winning the war, as Rome could resupply men and other resources far better than Pyrus could. He attempted to sign a treaty with the Romans, but the Romans would not allow him to stay in Italy, and they signed a treaty with Carthage to drive out this invader. Pyrus sailed to Sicily to defeat the Carthaginians, but he had left his allies in Italy open to the Romans. He returned to Italy to face the Romans for the last time in the Battle of Beneventum. The Romans defeated Pyrus finally and expelled him from Italy. The Romans then incorporated Tarentum, as well as the other Greek city-states, into Rome, and they finally controlled all of Italy. But although the Carthaginians had allied to Rome to deal with the threat of Pyrus, that peace wouldn't last for long, and Rome began to look outside of Italy. Come back next episode for the First Punic War.